everyone. My name is Ezra, otherwise known as E-Soup, and we're just breezing through Case File. How are y'all doing today? Hi, Nina. Good to see you. Today we're reading chapters 49 to 52. Oh, and thank you again, Nina, for doing the page math. That was so helpful. It's a little bit of a long one today because it's 55 pages today. But that's okay. I think I can actually make that in decent time and maybe not even go over or only a little bit. And I don't mind. So, I feel like this every time I start one of these streams, but I have no idea what to expect right now. Hi Soa. Hi Henry. Oh, you might have to leave early today. I feel like there was something I was gonna say, and it's just gone now. I've started working in the mornings on Wednesdays, and I am tired because I'm not a morning person, so I apologize for that. But you know what? We're reading Meat Bun today, so whatever happens in this book is probably gonna wake me up. So I'm just gonna get into it. We're on page 263. Henry, yeah, I put up, you know, the extras that come with the special edition. It was from volume 7 of Yuwu. The special edition had postcards of like all the covers, and they were just sitting around, and I was like, finally, I'm gonna do something with this. I'm going to put them on my wall. So I've been like, I have so much stuff that's just sitting waiting to go on my wall, and I was putting it off, and I was like, I need to do this. But yeah, so we're on page 263 for chapter 49, which is The Descent. Or sorry, not The Descent, just Descent. I'm thinking of the movie. Either way, a very ominous chapter title. Money-squandering establishments like this, with their stink of perfume, were usually off-putting to He Yu. But now, this was the only place where he could experience a hint of the carnal warmth of the human world. Young Master He. Hello, young Master He. The hostess was reverential as she opened the door to the private room. She welcomed him with her head lowered, not even daring to raise her eyes. The Sky Night Club was a den of decadence where bodies writhed in luxurious debauchery. It was operated as a fully above-board entertainment venue, but all the hosts it employed were not only fit and beautiful, but they were also excellent conversationalists. Even the revelers on the dance floor at the ground level were gorgeous. Many of these handsome men and beautiful women were willing to be taken out by clients on their own time, and when it came to a private relationship between individuals, well, that was just ordinary pleasure sought between couples in the middle of the night. Just a fortuitous encounter, right? Simple romance. It was no one's business to interfere. With the lure of such temptations, there was always a stream of luxury vehicles lining up outside the Sky Night Club's front doors. And countless pairs of pale, milky legs would climb into their car seats and snuggle up to those VIPs with a smile as they rode off into the night. He Yu had come here tonight with the malevolent intent to lash out. Falling into the muck had ignited a self-destructive kind of thrill in him. It was the same mindset as that of a student who had put all his efforts and savings into his studies, but failed to achieve respectable test results. No matter how hard he had strived, when the motivation to keep pushing onward finally dried out, When he failed the entrance exam once again, he would inevitably abandon himself to despair. Yu had finally figured it out. Why should he have to suffer so much just to hear pretty lies? In a place like the Sky Night Club, people would trip over themselves to cozy up to him. He could hear all kinds of pleasant talk and gentle coaxing all night long without a repeated word from any of them. He didn't need to lie to himself at all. As long as he opened his wallet, there were plenty of people who were happy to deceive him. They wouldn't run off halfway through like Xie Ching Chung, and they definitely wouldn't scorn his lack of allowance during their escape. Young Master He, these are the brightest hostesses that I have on staff. They'll be in charge of serving your private room, so if there's anything you need, please don't hesitate to let them know. He Yu didn't bother getting up from the sofa. He watched with an apathetic expression as the manager on duty, having received his permission, brought in 2 lines of hostesses. These were the top-end staff at the entertainment venue, each of them a different flavor of beauty. They filed in with smiles on their faces and stood behind the manager as he introduced them one by one. After that, the manager astutely took his leave, closing the door smoothly behind him. Oh, Saikin, I'm sorry you have to go early too. What's up with today? People just having to leave early. Young Master He, is there a game you would like to play today? Although this customer had a rather unfriendly look on his face, these well-trained hostesses nevertheless maintained their sweet smiles as they tentatively sounded him out. After a moment of silence, He Yu smiled. Let's break out some drinks. I feel bad making all of you stand here so awkwardly. The heavy, gilded drinks menu was passed into his hands. It was fucking first-degree robbery. Bottles costing less than 10,000 yuan were a rare sight, but there were plenty of wines with price tags of 100 or 200,000 yuan. Leaning indolently back against the sofa, He Yu checked off everything on the front page without batting an eye. Then, his eyes fell on a signature liquor named Plum Fragrance 59. He'd been here with clients countless times and knew exactly what kind of signature liquor this was. The string of zeros listed on the drink's price tag, as well as the 3 flaming heart symbols beside it, made certain that the customer knew what kind of experience this drink would provide. When He Yu had picked up the check on his previous visits, he'd see Plum Fragrance 59 listed on almost every bill. You might think that it smells very sophisticated at first. A half-drunk scoundrel who'd recommended it to He Yu had said as he laughed into his ear. But it's also very cheap and depraved. You know what I mean, young Master He? What do mean? Why is it depraved? Is it, like, secretly an aphrodisiac? Like, what? No, that wouldn't be surprising at all, actually. He Yu checked off Plum Fragrance 59 and carelessly passed the order list over to the young woman closest to him. The hostesses glanced at each other as excitement and delight filled their eyes. When they walked into the room, they'd thought that He Yu would be a tough customer. However, they were finding that he was actually handsome and pleasant. And generous, at that. They didn't even have to coax him into ordering the most expensive champagne tower on the menu. Young Master He, do you play dice? He Yu smiled and said mildly, I do. I'm just afraid you won't be able to keep up with me. The girl who had asked the question flirtatiously chided him. Well, if I can't keep up with you, young Master He ought to be a gentleman and let me win. That's right. Soft, warm bodies pressed closer into his sides, against his arms and legs, as He Yu looked at them with calm indifference. Indeed, given his current status, what kind of fawning ingratiation couldn't he afford, as long as he didn't seek sincerity? Bottles were opened and the champagne tower was built. The girls giggled ecstatically as they grew increasingly fearless in the glimmering liquid light. Young Master He, why are you here all alone today? Where are your friends? Young Master He, can you tell us about what happened at Huzhou University? The rumors are wild, and I want to hear your side of the story. Amidst the gentle banter, He Yu's cell phone suddenly began to ring. He glanced at it, and his expression subtly shifted. It was Xie Qingcheng. Who is it? It's nothing, replied He Yu. After a beat of silence, he propped his chin on his hand and casually swiped a finger over his screen to reject the call. He turned back to the girl before him, who had been in the middle of cracking a joke. Go on. Oh. Saikin, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for your loss. That's horrible. I send my best wishes to your family. Seeing He Yu's interest in her joke, the girl poured even more enthusiasm into her speech. A few seconds later, Xie Qingcheng called again. The phone rang nonstop, clamoring for him to pick up. A particularly audacious girl had hid a smile behind her hand as she asked, "Is it young Master He's girlfriend?" You're joking. He Yu rejected Xie Qingcheng's call again. This time the silence lasted longer, but a little over a minute later, the phone began to ring for a third time. He Yu was about to reject it, but his finger froze as it landed on the screen. This time, the call wasn't from Xie Qingcheng, but Xie Xue. After a brief hesitation, he answered his phone. He Yu, Xie Xue called out from the other end of the line. He Yu, I wanted to ask you about that day on campus. What exactly happened to my brother when he was with you? There was a tearful note to Xie Xue's voice, causing the fake smile that He Yu was wearing for all these strangers to fade slightly. Why did those old recordings of his suddenly get streamed on the murder video channel? I was afraid to look at first. But today, I did a thorough search online and found so many people cursing him. Did you know? There were even people who posted our address online, and someone came to vandalize our front door. I'm really so upset right now, and I'm too scared to call my brother, too. Even if I called him, he wouldn't say anything. He'd just scold me for searching up all these things, even though he told me not to. Xie Xue couldn't bear it any longer and burst into tears. All that remained on the line was the sound of her sobbing. The hostesses of this money-burning establishment had no idea what was happening. They kept smiling as they poured He Yu's wine. He Yu stroked a hand through a woman's long hair with a twisted tenderness. But as he listened to Xie Xue's tearful lament, the light in his eyes dimmed, the sounds of her despair passing through the speaker and soaking directly into his heart. I don't know what to do anymore. For a moment, He Yu thought of Wei Dongheng. Even though he was the one Xie Xue had a crush on, when something happened, she chose to go to He Yu instead. He felt slightly comforted for a moment, but then he remembered that Wei Dongheng had taken a leave of absence to visit his father in the military due to the death of an older family member, so he was at a heavily fortified army base with hardly any signal. Besides, He Yu thought, it was just a secret crush. Wei Dongheng might not even know what major Xie Xue taught, so of course she wouldn't seek him out. He Yu, Xie Xue sobbed spasmodically, her voice like an injured kitten. What should I do? I wanted to help my brother out, so I started a live stream to explain, but... She whimpered. I wanted to have a proper conversation, but no one was willing to calmly listen to me tell the whole story. I get it, but wow, that was a terrible idea. They started to curse at me halfway through, or just didn't listen at all. They even said that I was a fraud, that I wasn't his little sister, that I'm I'm... She sucked in a breath, but didn't continue. She sobbed for a while before saying helplessly, "They thought I was trying to use the murders to go viral, so they reported my video. Some people even said that my parents were the real culprits behind the scenes. But you know they've been gone for years. The dead should be respected. I thought we could leave the deceased out of it, but they asked me to show my parents' cremation certificate." Shue wept bitterly, unable to continue speaking. Yu's knuckles had gone slightly pale. He was too used to treating Shue well, so upon hearing her cries, his first instinct was to comfort her, to help her solve her problem. But just as he was about to speak, he recalled her messages to Xie Qingcheng. That human warmth slowly retreated from his disease-ridden, decaying heart. He fell silent. A voice inside him sighed and tried to coax him. Although Xie wasn't as good to him as he'd imagined, when all was said and done, she hadn't known anything. At the very least, she was the person he was closest to, and the one who treated him with the most tenderness. That was enough. But another voice stabbed into his flesh. There was no need for him to be benevolent or caring anymore. In fact, he should stop being so stupid. "Can I ask you something, Xie?" Yu finally said. Go ahead," Xie sniffled. Yu, seated in the luxurious private room, said to the girl who was curled up in her rundown and shabby little house, "When the hackers played those videos on all the mobile devices around Huzhou University that day, you saw them too." "I did." "Your brother is a doctor in a field related to psychiatry. It's understandable that he would be attacked if he says things like that. The internet fosters a more emotionally volatile environment in the first place. When nobody has to put a face to the words they're saying or reading, they act much more aggressively. I don't think that it's at all strange that he's getting cursed at." "But it's just a few words," he said. "All these years, he's always been diligent and responsible when it comes to his work. He's never done things carelessly. You know this." "I know," Yu interrupted her. He'd almost never interrupted Xie before. "But I also know other things about your brother, like how he told you to stay away from me." Xie seemed to be at a loss for how to respond, as if she didn't know the reason for the turnaround in his attitude. Yu, however, was so calm it was disturbing. "Xie, there's only one thing I want to ask you right now. Hearing your brother warn you about me all these years, have you ever suspected that I might be mentally ill?" Xie froze at the unexpected question. Had she? Had she ever? In the countless days that had passed, had she ever felt just a sliver of hesitation toward Yu because of Xie Qingcheng's words? Had she ever suspected, deep in her heart, that the reason why Xie Qingcheng had lived in the He family's residence for so long and admonished her constantly was because Yu was also a patient? Did she really have no suspicions at all? Xie wasn't any good at lying. She paused, hesitating for a long while as she held her phone dazedly. But how would you... Even if you were, then... No. You're so outstanding, you definitely wouldn't. Damn, okay. Yu's eyelashes quivered, casting wispy shadows over his face. He smiled softly and said, "You're right. I'm not." One of the hostesses lit a cigarette and tried to pass it to Yu. He took it, glanced at it, and then returned it to her with a smile and a polite shake of his head. He seemed calm on the surface, but there was a deranged darkness in his eyes. Then, Yu, can you... No, Yu said gently. Xie, I'm sorry. I can't. He was still smiling as he spoke, but the dull pain in his heart was boring through his chest with a force powerful enough to splinter the sky. His cold fingertips played with the woman's hair. "I have some business to take care of tonight, so I can't step away. Why don't you find someone else to keep you company? Hoyu's lips parted. We weren't all that close to begin with. Isn't that so? The girl at the other end of the line was dumbfounded. She'd never seen the side of Hoyu before. She'd never heard him speak in a voice so gentle and refined, yet devoid of the slightest hint of emotion. You know, Henry, you said, never mind, I was being too optimistic, but I could have seen this going so much worse. Like, I thought he was gonna start saying, like, yeah, Xie Qingcheng deserved that, and, like, he abandoned me, and you abandoned me, or something, like, all this kind of stuff. Like, it could have been worse. And I lost my place. He was still smiling as he spoke, but no, I read that already. Or perhaps the emotions entwined within were simply too deep, too profound. So profound that they'd crushed that youth. The He that she knew. The He that he himself knew. Until he was mangled beyond recognition. He didn't wait for Xie Shui to reply. He hung up, smiling. He'd been completely right. Xie Qingcheng's presence had rendered all his past efforts completely futile. He and Xie Shui could never have gotten together. No, perhaps from Xie Qingcheng's perspective, it wasn't just Xie Shui that Hoyu shouldn't be having an intimate relationship with, but anyone at all. Seeing that he'd hung up, the girl clinging to his side, who was the prettiest in the room, pouted. Young Master He, what do you want to play next? Her fingertips stroked his thigh indecently. Yu put down his phone and stared disdainfully at her. In a mild tone, he said, Take your hands off me. I don't like it when people touch me without permission. Sit properly and don't pull any of your tricks. Otherwise, I'll need to ask you to leave. His erratic behavior gave the girl a fright. The room fell silent. Everyone else sat up straighter, unsure of what to do. Yu ignored them as he drank on his own. He even uncorked that bottle of Plum Fragrance 59. Young Master He, the leader of the group tried to remind him, this liquor. I know what this is. He was very aware. He'd only uncorked the bottle. If or when he would drink it depended on how he ended up feeling. The atmosphere had become strained, and the girls didn't dare to make a sound. They stood there frozen like that until their feet started aching in their 8-inch heels. Then, a clamor came from outside the room. Sir, you can't go in there. Sir. Sir. All of a sudden, the door to the private room was rudely thrown open. Yu looked askance at the intruder. The man who appeared before Yu's icy-cold eyes, wearing a white button-down shirt and slim-fit dress pants, was none other than Xie Qingcheng. He hadn't picked up any of Xie Qingcheng's calls, so Xie Qingcheng had come barging in himself. The manager on duty by the door turned pale with fright. You useless waste of space. How could you let someone up here? The complexion of the bouncer who was trailing Xie Qingcheng had likewise turned waxy, but before he could say anything, Yu spoke up lazily from his spot on the sofa. Forget it. His voice carried the hint of a sneer, cold enough to cut through bone. He's quite formidable. It's to be expected that you couldn't stop him. Since he's already here, you might as well just let him in. Yu was speaking to the two employees, but his eyes remained unblinkingly fixed on Xie Qingcheng. Right, not his slim-fit dress pants. Xie Qingcheng had rushed here, so he was panting through parted lips, his breathing a bit uneven. Several strands had escaped from his usually neat hair and spilled over his keenly penetrating eyes, which sparked with flames like dots of crimson ink fallen into water. Yu stared into those eyes for a while before speaking with surprising composure. Dr. Xie, please come in. Ah, this. The bouncer, who had been trying to stop Xie Qingcheng, still hadn't caught up with the sudden change in circumstances. The manager, however, had a keen eye and was quick to react. How could he not recognize Xie Qingcheng? He'd been all over the internet for the past few days. He had suffered a shock at Huzhou University alongside He Yu. There was definitely some kind of unusual dispute between these two VIPs, and outsiders had better stay as far away as possible to avoid getting swept up in the impending hurricane. He shot the patrolling guard a meaningful look, and the two of them quickly retreated from the scene, closing the door that Xie Qingcheng had thrown open as they left. And are they the only ones in the room now? Are all the girls leaving too? Inside the room, the two men looked at each other, neither of them speaking a word. But the instant their eyes met, both of them knew what was going through the other's mind. It had only been a handful of days since their last meeting, but at this moment, their perspectives had already been turned on their heads. Their positions had been reversed, and everything had changed. Henry calls Xie Qingcheng Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl the way he's been all over the internet these days. That reminds me that I still haven't watched that performance and I need to, so thank you, Henry. Also, Saikeen, the Legally Blonde theme, yeah. So, that was the end of the chapter. We're on page 275, for chapter 50, which is called I Was No Longer Who I Was Before. Henry, I will watch it after this stream, actually. Because otherwise I'm gonna forget again. How did you know I was here? He Yu poured a glass of red wine for himself. After pouring another for Xie Qingcheng, he gestured to the woman beside him to pass the drink over. Okay, so there's still people in there. Xie Qingcheng didn't take it. He Yu interlaced his fingers and looked at him calmly. After a moment, he said, Dr. Xie, if you really want to have a proper conversation with me, it would be best if you finish this glass of wine. Suppressing a myriad of complicated emotions, Xie Qingcheng looked down at him from where he stood and tried his hardest to keep his cool. He Yu, it's time for you to go. Don't say that. People might think we have some sort of special relationship. He Yu smiled. The alluring woman beside him lit another cigarette. Surprisingly, he accepted it this time. As he stared unblinkingly at Xie Qingcheng with his almond eyes, his lips parted to take the cigarette. He took a slow, deep drag, then gracefully and unhurriedly breathed it out, dispersing a cloud of gray smoke. He Yu was a social smoker. When he was networking, he would sometimes accept a cigarette with a shallow smile to blend in, but he didn't enjoy smoking, and he never touched them in private. Before now, Xie Qingcheng had no idea that He Yu, as someone who abhorred smoking, could hold a cigarette in this effortless, even well-practiced manner. Give Dr. Xie a cigarette, too. The woman lit another cigarette as directed and held it before Xie Qingcheng. Xie Qingcheng didn't take it. I don't smoke. He Yu laughed, pressing the hand holding his cigarette against his forehead. My God, Dr. Xie, you are really a complete hypocrite, aren't you? How did I never realize? There are many things you don't know, said Xie Qingcheng. If you leave with me now, you can ask me whatever you want. As long as I can answer, I'll tell you everything. I feel like that's not going to happen right now, though. We're going to find out the whole story in, like, several volumes from now. He Yu, who was lazily reclining against the sofa, sat up at Xie Qingcheng's words. Straightening up, he propped his elbow on the back of the sofa, then nodded with a sigh. That's right. There are many things I don't know. He raised his puppy-like almond eyes. though right now, the look in those eyes was eerily cold, more reminiscent of a wolf. For example, Xie Qingcheng prompted. For example, the reason why you suddenly refused to keep working at the hospital back then, or why you suddenly began avoiding me as if I were some vicious snake or scorpion. Yu paused. He didn't plan to mention Xie Xue or the contract to Xie Qingcheng yet. He'd already said enough. What was the point of adding more and further highlighting his own idiocy? Xie Qingcheng. Yu's pupils drifted upward as he glanced coldly at that man, pausing between every word he ground out. I didn't know about any of this back then. Xie Qingcheng closed his eyes. Is that why you abandoned yourself to this den of iniquity? The girls of this den of iniquity lapsed into silence. Yu's smile widened, menacingly revealing the canines that he usually kept hidden. With this subtle change, his normally gentle features became rather sinister. First of all, Dr. Xie, this is an above-board establishment, which doesn't deal in sex, gambling, or drugs. The girls who work here are beautiful and attentive in their service, but that should be of no consequence to you. If I spend 100,000 yuan on a bottle of wine, I'd hardly expect to be served by a bunch of hideous trolls. Secondly, Xie Qingcheng, may I ask why you always hold yourself in such high regard? Xie Qingcheng was silent. Just who do you think you are? Don't tell me you think that no matter where I go or what I do, it's all because of you. Yu's smile disappeared, leaving behind only storm clouds in its wake. Professor Xie, I know that older people like to put on airs. Plus, you are quite a successful professor, so there are always plenty of students chasing after you and fawning over you. You feel like you're on top of the world, right? It makes sense that you'd get used to being treated like a big shot wherever you go. I get why a middle-aged person like you might have that kind of problem. But just so we're clear, I only do things when I feel like it. Yu tapped away his cigarette ash and leaned back, resting his other arm against the back of the sofa. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. Only then did Xie Qingcheng notice Yu's bloodshot eyes and his sickly, discolored lips. Yu is in an even worse state now than during the severe flare-ups he'd had in the past. Xie Qingcheng's heart lurched. I know, whenever he calls him middle-aged, and I'm just like, please stop. Please don't say that. Yu often had a high fever during his flare-ups, and Xie Qingcheng knew his symptoms better than anyone. He subconsciously reached for Yu's forehead to check his temperature. Yu's hand snapped around Xie Qingcheng's wrist. He didn't appear to be exerting himself, but despite his lack of expression, his fingers tightened with a force that brooked no refusal. If you have something to say, then say it properly. There's no need to get physical, he said, gazing at Xie Qingcheng. I don't think we've ever been so close that you can touch me however you like. Xie Qingcheng's arm slackened, and the light in his eyes gradually dimmed. The two of them stayed deadlocked for a spell before Yu loosened his hold, and Xie Qingcheng lowered his hand. Yu, Xie Qingcheng said eventually. He turned away to avoid Yu's dark, icy gaze. Regardless of whether you believe it or not, the things that I said back then, they weren't about you. I wasn't talking about you. What things? Yu feigned confusion, dipping his head in thought. Then he grinned. Oh, I don't think dying for the sake of a patient is worth it. And to be murdered by a lunatic would be such a waste it'd be laughable. Well said. You have a point. Why would you need to explain any further? He looked around and continued mildly. Don't tell me there's a lunatic among us. Shouldn't those people be shut away, locked up in cages and restrained, treated with electroshock therapy and force-fed medicine? If it comes to it, it's best to cut open their skulls and slice through their nerves. How can we possibly allow them the freedom to breathe fresh air whenever they please? Don't you agree? Xie Qingcheng didn't respond. The private room was filled with too many onlookers, and He Yu's status as a mentally ill patient was a secret that few were privy to. He fell silent for a moment before he raised his peach blossom eyes and asked, "Can you send these people out?" "Why?" "There are some things that I'd like to say to you in private." He Yu smiled. "I don't think that's necessary. I think we can skip the lecture, Dr. Xie. You have so many students waiting for you to expound on universal truths to them. There's no need to waste your energy on me. It's not like I'm anything special to you, and the same can be said for what you are to me. This is fine. I'd rather not complicate our relationship any further. If that's all, then you can go." Given Xie Qingcheng's temper, in the past, he definitely would have given He Yu an earful and then forced him to obey his commands. But standing before He Yu now, knowing he was the one at fault, Xie Qingcheng only said, "What can I do to make you go home? Your parents wouldn't want to see you like this." It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned He Jiwei and Liu Jishu, because the moment he brought them up, He Yu's mood immediately darkened. He stared at Xie Qingcheng. After everything they'd said, they'd still ended up looping back to his parents. He'd thought back to the messages Xie Qingcheng had sent to He Jiwei. Those had been much more genuine than anything he said to He Yu. Perhaps, in Xie Qingcheng's mind, only He Jiwei was a person who could stand on equal footing with him. The day Xie Qingcheng quit his job, He Yu had abandoned his dignity and pathetically tried to use his allowance to keep this man from leaving. It was because he believed that if Xie Qingcheng left, Xie Shui would disappear too, and he would once again fall into that inescapably terrifying loneliness. Henry, you're so right. You took 2 bullets for him not a month ago. What are you talking about? Back then, he had said to Xie Qingcheng, "I have a lot of allowance. I can..." But Xie Qingcheng had interrupted him, launched into a slew of bombastic, pretentious-sounding rhetoric, and told him that first and foremost, his employer was He Jiwei. He said that He Yu couldn't possibly afford to hire him, and that he might as well save his insignificant pocket money and spend it on cakes to make himself happy. He Yu should have known right then and there that to Xie Qingcheng, he was only ever He Jiwei's son. If not for his father, Xie Qingcheng might not pay him any attention. He Yu's already grim mood crept even closer to madness at this thought, but his expression remained apathetic. He carefully examined Xie Qingcheng as he slowly finished the wine in his glass, thinking of He Jiwei, thinking of the broadcasting tower, thinking of Xie Shui, thinking of the sincerity that he had never once received. He hated Xie Qingcheng so much. He wanted to tear him to shreds. As He Yu poured himself another glass of wine, he realized that the cup in front of Xie Qingcheng was untouched. He grew even angrier, sneering, "Dr. Xie really has no sense of etiquette. What kind of person comes to apologize by bringing up someone's parents to subdue them, and without even deigning to share a drink with them? Are you planning on saving the wine in your glass to raise fish with?" He grabbed another empty cup, picked an open bottle at random, and filled the glass to the brim. "Take a seat. Since you're here, you might as well sit down and drink with me for a while. We can talk afterward, Dr. Xie. You don't smoke. Could it be... Dr. Xie, you don't smoke. Could it be that you also don't drink?" Xie Qingcheng knew he wouldn't be regaining the dominant position in their relationship today. So he did as He Yu said, wasted no more words, and sat down on the sofa across from him. "If I drink, will you leave? Is Dr. Xie willing to risk his life to accompany a degenerate like me?" The private room was deathly silent. As if affected by the tension between the two men, everyone else barely dared to breathe. Amidst this nerve-wracking silence, Xie Qingcheng reached over and into that invisible bloody maelstrom. He picked up the wine glass from the low marble table and plunked it down in front of him. Through the swirling liquid, Beneath the hazy lights, Xie Qingcheng's features looked as cold and hard as sedimentary rock at the base of an icy pool. He raised the glass of dry red wine and drained it in a single gulp. Then he picked up the other glass of liquor that He Yu had poured for him, and likewise tossed it back without blinking. The strong alcohol burned a path down his throat. Yeah, so I wasn't sure if it said, like, he poured him another glass of wine, or what he poured him. But it says he picked up the other glass of liquor that He Yu had poured for him. Is that the plum 59, the plum 69 is what we should be calling it, I think. Is that what that is? Because I feel like that's what that was. The strong alcohol burned a path down his throat. He Yu finally smiled. Excellent. Xie Ge can really hold his drink. He tilted his head, eyes still fixed on Xie Qingcheng, and said to the young woman beside him, "Pour him another glass." The lead hostess was silent, but her face blanched. She gathered her courage and leaned down to whisper a few words into He Yu's ear. He Yu started in surprise, his gaze sweeping over to the bottle of liquor that he had just poured for Xie Qingcheng. Plum Fragrance 59? He had accidentally given Xie Qingcheng a glass of aphrodisiac liquor. He Yu had been planning on using this liquor to help himself let loose, since he was in a bad mood today. But he had accidentally made Xie Qingcheng drink it instead. His eyes shot up to Xie Qingcheng's face, only to meet the man's cold, stern gaze. The liquor's effect had yet to kick in. Xie Qingcheng still had no idea that he had been drugged. But He Yu knew that Xie Qingcheng wouldn't remain sober for long. You might think that it smells very sophisticated at first, but it's also very cheap and depraved. The words that He Yu's half-drunk friend had said into his ear resurfaced in his mind. How could he have made such a stupid mistake? Why hadn't he taken a good look at the bottle when he poured the drink? His heart began to pound. Cold sweat dripped down his back. But in the several dozen seconds of silence that followed, He Yu's mood went from shocked to calm. Then from calm to crazed. The mistake had already been made. So did that mean he had to rush Xie Qingcheng to the hospital? He could never. Besides, there was no point in taking Xie Qingcheng to the hospital. The aphrodisiac only provoked desire. It wasn't poison. I was about to say, like, how strong is it? He Yu stared fixedly and silently at Xie Qingcheng, dressed impeccably in his neat attire, his appearance stern and self-restrained, and his face exceedingly dignified. This unintended accident sparked an idea in He Yu's crazed mind that roared into a flame. Perhaps fate had willed this. This was retribution. This was Xie Qingcheng's retribution. He was reaping what he sowed. Even fate couldn't stand his hypocrisy any longer, so it brought him this coincidence. Xie Qingcheng was only human, and all humans had desires. When they were consumed by a desire that they couldn't satisfy, they would fall into a wretched state, begging on their knees for gratification. He Yu stared at Xie Qingcheng in silence. His curiosity was ignited. How magnificent a sight would that be? If Xie Qingcheng were to burn in the flames of this liquor, and kneel before him, unable to even talk properly, as he drowned in desire and completely lost control of himself. That's a very... that's a very heterosexual thought. Xie Qingcheng set down his empty glass. Is this enough? He Yu didn't answer. That idea of seeing Xie Qingcheng succumb to desire was still circling his head, tempting him. But because giving him the first cup of Plum Fragrance 59 had been unintentional, Yu was still a bit hesitant to proceed. Xie Qingcheng said, "If this isn't enough, I'll keep drinking with you. I can drink until you're satisfied and willing to leave. As long as you don't lose yourself tonight. As long as you don't make a mess of yourself here." Startled, Yu looked up. "Why?" Xie Qingcheng told him with deliberate emphasis, "Because this was my mistake. And since it was my mistake, you shouldn't be the one paying the price." In his muddled state, Yu's heart stuttered violently, just like it had all those years ago when Xie Qingcheng had told him for the first time that the mentally ill ought to be given equal treatment. But then rage overtook him. He was irate with himself. Why, after it had already come to this, would he still be moved by a few paltry words from this person? This vehement rage only encouraged Yu's cruelty. His hesitation vanished, and he finally decided to carry out the malicious plot brewing deep within his mind. He slowly leaned back and splayed back against the sofa. He sighed softly. "Xiege, look, you're trying to placate me again." This sudden change in address seemed to give Xie Qingcheng some hope. He gazed at Yu, who had propped a hand against his cheek and was still sighing. "But for some reason, I'm still willing to let you placate me," Yu said. "Yu, Xiege, tell me, is everything that you're saying to me this time the honest truth?" Xie Qingcheng looked into his eyes. For some reason, he felt a faint discomfort in his heart. He said, "It is." Yu watched him quietly for a long time before his face broke into the expression he used to wear, like that of a fledgling dragon. "You're not lying to me?" "I'm not lying to you." "Then let's make a pinky promise." Yu slowly leaned forward and offered his finger. He had made a very childish request, as if he had also drunk too much. But the moment Xie Qingcheng extended his own finger, Yu suddenly opened his hand, reached forward, and coldly caressed Xie Qingcheng's handsome face. Not his handsome face. He looked at Xie Qingcheng in amusement, the fledgling dragon's innocence transforming into the sinister gloom of an evil dragon right in front of Xie Qingcheng's eyes. "How naive of you, Xie Qingcheng. Were you really going to make a pinky promise with me? It's such a pity that this time, I was the one who was lying to you. How could I possibly trust you again so easily? You hurt me so deeply." The hint of light in Xie Qingcheng's eyes dimmed once again. In the prolonged silence, the youth watched the fire fading from the man's eyes. "How about this?" Yu said after some thought. He sat back up, calmly picked up that bottle of Plum Fragrance 59, and signaled for a pretty, clever woman to bring over an empty glass. He personally filled it more than half full, and placed it on Xie Qingcheng's side of the table. The lead hostess's face paled in fright. She'd assumed that since Yu knew about the strong liquor, he wouldn't give this man any more. That one glass would be difficult enough to handle. But here Yu was, pouring Xie Qingcheng yet another nearly full glass. "The sight of you like this moves me a little," Yu said mildly. "I can give you another chance, but you have to show me your sincerity." The first glass had been a mistake, but he was going to coax Xie Qingcheng into downing the second glass of his own volition. "I don't have many requests. Just drink a few more rounds with me, and when I'm satisfied, I'll leave with you. I won't force you, but if you truly begun to care about me, you'll be willing to grant me this much." Yu looked up. "What do you think?" Xie Qingcheng looked at him in silence. Then, a moment later, he raised the glass that Yu had poured for him once again. "As long as you'll go, I'll drink." Yu watched as Xie Qingcheng tilted his head back, his throat bobbing as he swallowed. Amidst his own tipsiness burned a densely roiling cloud of resentment. "Drink it. Drink it all. Once you've drunk enough of this liquor, Your retribution will come. Retribution, Yu thought once more. He would be able to see all of Xie Qingcheng's ugly desire, see him lose control in front of these women, painfully ensnared, yet unable to satisfy his need. That was what they called karma. They called a complete loss of face. The hostesses in the room barely dared to breathe. They could see that young Master He was messing with this man on purpose. Part of me is like, I feel like you should tell the man something in that situation, but I completely understand that they're scared of He Yu. Like, the hostesses are like, they don't want to say anything because He Yu is being scary. He had generously poured the Plum Fragrance 59 into a large wine glass, and from the way things were going, he seemed to be planning on having this man drain the entire bottle. Two women standing near the back of the room trembled in fright, tugging at the hems of each other's miniskirts. One whispered to the other, "What should we do? What else can we do? Stand here and keep them company. I'm so worried something will happen. The last time a big shot drank a bit too much, he nearly tormented the mistress he brought with him to death. What if young Master He makes us help him later? Don't worry. We can still refuse. We're only here to serve drinks. Everything else is personal business where all parties have to be willing. Even young Master He can't force us." But their voices were a bit loud. The lead hostess standing in front overheard them and turned back to give them a warning glare. Afraid to make another sound, the two girls looked down, their hearts pounding in their chests. The third glass was downed. A light flush appeared on Xie Qingcheng's face, and his eyes began to lose focus. But he had yet to notice anything wrong with the liquor. He only looked at the young man in front of him. He reached up and pressed a hand to his forehead. With a drunken and slightly nasal tone, he said, "He Yu, that's enough. Stop this and come home with me." He Yu poured Xie Qingcheng another full glass of the liquor and pushed it over. In a voice that had become soft, and was no longer as icy cold as it was when Xie Qingcheng first arrived, he enticed him. "All right. Of course I'll go back with you. You're such a prestigious person. I'll listen to everything you say. Come, Xiege, have another glass. After this, the whole bottle will be pretty much gone, so don't waste any of it now." One thing I'm wondering is, does Xie Qingcheng, like, drink normally? He's a big smoker, but I don't know if he does actually drink. So he could be in a situation where he's like, "I'm just getting drunk. I guess this is what getting drunk is like." You're right, Henry. You referred to him as a young man and not a kid here. Xie Qingcheng leaned back against the sofa. Those peach blossom eyes of his were already bloodshot and a little misty under the influence of the alcohol. His face had also become rather flushed, but he was still neatly dressed, his shirt securely buttoned up, not showing the slightest inclination of breaching decorum. He downed the fourth glass of liquor. On second thought, maybe he's really good at holding his liquor. And so it's still gonna, the other effects are gonna hit him, but he's good at holding his drink, apparently. The bottle was almost empty, yet Xie Qingcheng was still in full control of his faculties and did not take even the slightest glances at the beautiful women surrounding him. If someone had faked it for long enough, part of their act would become fused to their true self. Wasn't that right? Hu Yu fell silent. He was a little displeased, a little irritated. He thought that perhaps because Xie Qingcheng had been single for too long, he needed some egging on. He looked up, shooting a glance at the two women standing next to Xie Qingcheng. The two quick-witted Jiejies immediately realized what they needed to do. One of them picked up the glass with a smile, while the other walked around to the back of the sofa and sat down coyly, leaning into Xie Qingcheng. "Hey, handsome. I heard young Master He call you Xiege, so I'll call you that too, all right?" The girl's body bent in a supple arc as she looked up coquettishly, and exhaled, and exhaled a fragrant breath into Xie Qingcheng's ear. Her manicured hand drew closer to Xie Qingcheng's broad chest, and she slid her fingertips over the rigidly fastened collar of his ascetic dress shirt. After all, men's collars were designed to be undone by others. Sorry, but whose thought was that? Who had that thought? Men's collars were designed to be undone by others. Like, Yu, is that you? Xie Qingcheng was handsome and brimming with masculinity, so genuine interest bled into the girl's provocative teasing. Xie, why don't I drink another glass with you? A slap rang through the room as Xie Qingcheng grabbed the woman's slender wrist in a vice grip, making her flinch. He closed his eyes for a beat, and some lucidity returned to his gaze. He shook her off. Get off me. The woman was speechless. Get off. Stop acting so shamelessly. The woman turned pale before flushing red. Finally, she looked awkwardly toward Yu, unsure how young Master He would react. And then she saw Yu's downright terrifying expression as he stared fixedly at the man sitting across from him. Yu was leaning back against the sofa, one elbow extending across the back of it, and his other hand holding his wine glass. His slender legs were crossed. Legs were mentioned. Not long legs, but slender legs. His slender legs were crossed, and his eyes were icy cold, overflowing with frost. Since his plan had failed, he had finally stopped pretending. Xie Qingcheng's head throbbed as a terrible fever flashed through him again and again. Are you leaving or not? Yu sighed. You can't even utter 2 words of sweet talk without reverting to bossing people around. Xie, you were such a heartless bastard. He paused, and a dark, dangerous smile bloomed at the corners of his mouth. I'm willing to go with you now. But at this point, can you even leave? Xie Qingcheng's gaze inched up slowly. Even the rims of his eyes seemed to be burning. He finally realized that something was wrong. The effects of Plum Fragrance 59 had begun to rush madly through his entire body. Xie Qingcheng gasped for air, as his body's visibly adverse reaction to the alcohol manifested right before Yu's eyes. Xie Qingcheng's originally pale skin flushed an unnatural shade of pink, like a spot of rouge frozen within a slab of ice. It was as though the liquor had soaked into his very bones. This liquor, it's a little expensive, Yu crooned, but it's a good vintage. Dr. Xie treated me so well. Of course I have to return the favor. Isn't that right? Xie Qingcheng jerked to his feet. He never could have imagined that Yu would go this far. Flames of fury burned directly into his suppressed inner heart as he swept everything off the tea table, shattering the wine glasses and liquor bottles and sending shards across the floor. He stepped over the tea table and grabbed Yu by the lapels. Are you fucking insane? You actually... Yes? Xie Qingcheng's voice was shaking with fury. No matter how guilty he felt, his eyes still reddened with rage at what this lunatic had done. You drugged me. That's the end of the chapter. It's time for me to take a break. Does everyone want to hear the next chapter title? When we come back, we'll be on chapter 51, which is called I Wanted Him to Submit. And I'm gonna tell you because 7C's paper is thinner than it used to be. I could see the word submit, like, through the paper on the previous page. Like, I couldn't really tell exactly what the chapter title was, but I saw the word submit, and it was so hard to just, like, keep reading. I was like, hold on, excuse me, what? Like, Well, that's where we're at when I come back. So, I will be back in about 10 minutes. Hold on, I'm back. I'm going to change to the proper break screen because I changed the break screen and I want you to see the jellyfish, and I knew I forgot something. I forgot to fix it in OBS. So give me like a minute and it will be here. Hi, I'm back. The later quotes in the video, well, honestly, most of the quotes in that video, except for the funny ones, are just like really depressing. So, well, yeah, or the later ones at least. I added a few quotes to it today, and I was like, yeah, this is dark, as expected. Um, so, so where were we? Henry, you're correct. We are so far into this volume already. Things are happening. Xie Qingcheng just drank some special liquor. And well, we are on page 291 for chapter 51. I wanted him to submit. Guh, don't talk nonsense. Yu pressed a finger to his lips before immediately curving it and dropping his hand. He smiled faintly with his eyes lowered. It was just a few glasses of liquor. What drugs are you talking about? Besides, no one forced you to drink. You drank it all of your own volition. Why are you blaming me for your intoxication? Xie Qingcheng grew even more furious. You're unbelievable. Yu, this is absurd. How could you? Yu smiled quietly, maintaining that same gentle mien as before. However, the facade only persisted for a few seconds before collapsing, as Xie Qingcheng's last sentence tipped his temper past a critical threshold. He didn't want to pretend anymore. His face changed as he struck back before anyone could react, grabbing Xie Qingcheng's hair and ruthlessly shoving him to the floor. Bang! The back of Xie Qingcheng's head crashed down on the edge of the marble table. Oh. That? I wasn't expecting him to attack him on like that. Xie Qingcheng, whose body was weak from the effect of the liquor, let out a low gasp of pain as blood immediately gushed out of the wound. Some of the timider girls couldn't help but shriek out of fear that a serious fight was going to break out, like birds startling at the twang of a bow. I mean, he's bleeding. It's a serious fight already. Yu rose to his feet and looked down indifferently at Xie Qingcheng. The injury was only superficial. It looked scary, but it wouldn't kill him. But the metallic scent of blood stoked Yu's madness. His expression was glacial, but a twisted fire seemed to burn within his dark eyes. Listen, Xie Qingcheng, you'd better stop lecturing me. Grabbing a fistful of Xie Qingcheng's hair, He Yu yanked his head up, forcing him to look at him. Then, he slid his hand down to run his thumb ever so slowly over Xie Qingcheng's lips as he whispered, "You don't have the right to teach me a lesson, nor do you have the status or authority." The man's lips were cold as ice, while the youth's thumb was hot enough to burn. But it wasn't hot enough to thaw that ice. No pleasant words could be dragged from Xie Qingcheng's lips. He Yu and Xie Qingcheng stared at each other. He Yu's temper suddenly flared, like a spark bursting into flames. He straightened up and kicked Xie Qingcheng squarely in the chest, hard enough to make the tea table skid across the floor along with him. Wine glasses shattered all over the floor with a great crash. The girls scattered in fright, then huddled together in the corner like a flock of startled birds as they watched these two guests who had suddenly come to furious blows. He Yu gazed at the man lying on the floor, his eyes filling with the bitter hatred he had finally unleashed. What I really can't stand is when you lecture me with a mouthful of lies. Your legs are too weak to even stand up right now, so you should learn to kneel and prostrate yourself, and shut your mouth. That's how you should behave. He lowered his almond eyes and elegantly straightened out his shirt with no expression on his face, then sat back down onto the leather sofa. Xie Qingcheng was half leaning against the tea table, coughing softly. He hadn't often been hit before. When he was younger, he was usually the one dishing out the beatings, and when he got older and settled down, he no longer needed to resort to violence to solve his problems. Wait a minute. Sorry, I'm just... Xie Qingcheng. We're talking about Xie Qingcheng here. When he was younger, he was usually the one dishing out the beatings. Do we know this about him? Is this new information? He was just, like, beating people up when he was younger? This was the first time someone had smashed his head down and kicked him to the ground. Not only that, but his opponent was just a kid, still in school. Xie Qingcheng didn't even register the pain. When he pressed his hand to the wound at the side of his head and came away with a palm full of blood, he only felt an overwhelming rage flood through him, making the scene in front of him swim before his eyes. But what was even more terrifying was the restless arousal coursing through his body, growing fiercer by the second. He had never experienced a feeling like this before. He barely ever reacted to desire. That was just the kind of person he'd always been. But he had drunk too much of that drugged liquor, and its cumulative effect was igniting practically all of the compounds in his body with a chemically induced fire. He forced his eyes shut, trying to suppress that terrifying tremble within him, but it was no use. Even his breathing had become abnormally heavy, and his clothes were a hot layer around him. It was like his entire body was about to be swept away by lust powerful enough to burn him up alive. But you, fuck you. You still have the energy to cuss me out? Did the shady nightclub water down the liquor, or what? He Yu carelessly shoved the girl beside him, who was trembling from head to toe. You, go help our guest up. Even though the girl was terrified out of her mind, she had no choice but to approach Xie Qingcheng, her small face deathly pale, and leaned down to help him up. As Xie Qingcheng got a whiff of that soft, cloying sweetness, the effect of Plum Fragrance 59 seemed to intensify. Panting, he fiercely pushed the girl away. Get away. I told you to get away from me. Frightened to the point of breaking down, the girl scrambled backward with a quiet sob, as if she wanted to hide in a corner of the room. But He Yu intercepted her. With his eyes fixed on Xie Qingcheng, He Yu pulled the girl toward him, and gestured for her to kneel beside him. He carelessly stroked her hair with one hand, as she curled up by his feet, as if he was petting a cat or a dog. Xie Qingcheng, He Yu said, you've been married before. How are you still so awful at showing favor to the fairer sex? Xie Qingcheng raised his thoroughly bloodshot eyes. The young man gazing down his nose at him from high above was alarmingly unfamiliar. All these years, even though Yu had been an evil dragon hidden in a rocky cave, complete with horns, fangs, and a vicious tail, he could always see the subtle emotions on the faces of humans. He knew that he had to sheathe his piercing talons before he touched the cheek of a human with his sharp claws, that he mustn't incite people's terror. But he didn't want to disguise himself any longer. He took in all of Xie Qingchung's resentment, but his heart was perfectly calm. He'd always been such a cruel and unfeeling person, hadn't he? Henry, you're right. Yep. He's back to seeing Yu as a kid. Or at least, I think he maybe goes back and forth. In that moment, at least, he wanted to see him as a kid. Yu gently but insistently poured a glass of red wine for the petrified girl beside him, forcing her to choke down its contents even as she held back tears, all the while stroking a faultlessly considerate hand over her back. Don't worry, everything's fine. Then he said to Xie Qingcheng, just look at how badly you scared her. If she's not to your liking, you should just tell me. I'll find someone else to attend to you. I'll keep swapping them out until you're satisfied. Xie Qingcheng rested his forehead in a shaking hand without a word. The drug had already stoked the heat within him to the point of madness. His mind began to blur, making him feel as though his very blood had caught on fire. He leaned back against the tea table, gasping for breath, his eyes suffused with red as he shuddered uncontrollably from head to toe. Humans were fundamentally weak in the face of such primal desire. Even such a cool-headed and self-disciplined young man, I think he's young. He's definitely not middle-aged. Even such a cool-headed and self-disciplined man had no way of staving off the fervent lust that this drug stirred up inside him. Yu wound his fingers through the young woman's long hair repeatedly as he gestured toward another girl. Your turn now. Go serve him properly. Be smart about it now. Stay away, groaned Xie Qingcheng. The girl paused, stuck between a rock and a hard place. Yu said mildly, just do as I say. Steeling herself, the hostess pulled Xie Qingcheng upright and tried her best to bring him over to the sofa. But she wasn't very strong to begin with, and Xie Qingcheng was heavy. In the process, the woman inadvertently landed in Xie Qingcheng's arms. She cried out softly, "Aya!" Xie Qingcheng's scalp went numb. It had indeed been ages since he last slept with anyone. He had never been enthusiastic about sex when he was with Li Ruoqiu, and after they broke up, he had basically been celibate. He rarely even took care of things by himself. With the drugged liquor fanning the flames and heating up the lust in his body to its boiling point, he found himself reacting against his will when that supple body leaned into him. Even though he was so furious, he wished he were dead. As it turned out, Xie Qingcheng happened to be just this woman's type. Handsome and tall with an especially masculine aura. So ascetic and self-controlled, even as his body burned with lust, and gave off a man's uniquely male hormones. Emboldened, she wrapped her arms around him and enthusiastically pressed closer. Xie Qingcheng abruptly ducked away from her. He said in an extremely hoarse voice, "Get away from me." "Guh." Xie Qingcheng bellowed harshly. "Are you deaf? I told you to get away from me." Yu looked on coolly from across the room. This man was really fucking good at acting and restraint, he thought. Even at this point, he could still control himself, remaining solemn and composed, unwilling to even touch a woman who had thrown herself at him. He'd spent so long masquerading as a respectable person that he didn't want to remove his mask anymore, did he? Just as there were those among the hostesses who were meek, there were some who were more daring. One of the girls, seeing the way Xie Qingcheng never spared a single glance at her or her fellow hostesses, was suddenly struck by an idea. Hoping to win Yu's favor with an unconventional gambit, she assumed the role of a bumbling advisor and whispered to him, "Young Master He, about this friend of yours. Could it be that he's... Yu didn't catch her drift. His face cold, he asked, "He's what?" Instead of saying it outright, the girl said, "Young Master He, we also have some very handsome male hosts here." It took 3 seconds for Yu to figure out what she meant. "He's not. That won't be necessary." Xie Qingcheng was straight as an arrow. He'd be disgusted to no end by the attention of those girly little homos. That Meat Bun wrote that. And I had to read that. Okay. The girl, however, had a look on her face that said, well, it's not like you necessarily know whether he's gay or not. Given the people who patronize this establishment, what kinds of outlandish clientele and acts of absurdity hadn't these hostesses seen? Young Master He really was too young and lacking in imagination. Of course, this disrespectful thought had to be kept to herself. Since young Master He had vetoed her suggestion, she couldn't insist any further. But for some reason, the girl's words made Yu think back to Neverland and the guest book he had seen. There had indeed been a lot of bottoms who had written in the guest book, all of them thirsting after Xie Qingcheng, saying he was so manly that he was the ideal top. And what about himself? He was the one who kept getting harassed by men in the past, and those blind bastards in that guest book had even said that they wanted to top him. Yu got mad just thinking about it. To outsiders, he was always weaker than Xie Qingcheng. Even in this aspect, he was inferior to Xie Qingcheng. But now, who was the one who was helpless before the other? He looked down at Xie Qingcheng's flushed skin, and the silent endurance etched into his features. He actually seemed a bit fragile. He ought to let those damn gays who called Xie Qingcheng ge and thought he was invincible see him now. This was the ideal top of their dreams. Such a lustful, wretched appearance, burning under the influence of alcohol, yet still unwilling to touch those women. Now, if... Ooh, okay. Alright, okay. Now, if he were the one being topped, that would be more like it. The... I'm trying to get through this. The idea made Yu's heart skip a beat, although he didn't know why. The very thought of Xie Qingcheng getting fucked sent a subtle thrill through his cerebral cortex, as if some nerve had been struck with a jolt of electricity. A crash snapped Yu out of his daze. The girls were just as shocked. Xie Qingcheng's body was enduring such unbearable torment that he'd abruptly crushed the thick, branch-shaped glass lampstand near the tea table into pieces. He curled up on the ground in pain, the veins on his hands bulging as his body trembled. The girls who could help relieve his torment were right next to him, yet he would rather endure it all the way through, unwilling to touch or look at them, even if he tortured himself to death. These girls had seen their share of nasty perverts and usually spent their time rejecting and pushing them away. This was the first time they'd met such a gentleman, and even in their confusion, they felt somewhat bad for him. Finally, the lead hostess spoke up. Young Master He, why don't we try to resolve this a different way? If you have any resentment or grudges, you can resolve it in private in the future, but let's just leave it at this for today, okay? She had a conscience, after all, and didn't lack guts. Besides, there was a limit to the service offered in this establishment. If they really crossed the line, there wouldn't be enough tea at the police station to go around. And there's a footnote. Drinking tea is a euphemism for being forced to meet with the police. She saw how bad Xie Qingcheng's condition was and how hard he was struggling, and even as her heart pounded in terror, she gathered her courage and lowered her head to try to talk Yu around. Henry, thank you. You reading this while trying not to laugh is making this so much more immersive. I'm glad. Meanwhile, I'm drinking tea. Sometimes you gotta have your your sip of tea when they talk about drinking tea at the police station. And other kinds of tea as well. We're just a small business. We can't cross certain lines. Otherwise, we couldn't bear the liability and continue with our work. Thank you for your understanding, but Ho Yu didn't respond, still staring at Xie Qingcheng. He tightened his hold on his glass, the veins on the back of his hand protruding one after another. Had this man taken his disguise to such extremes that it had become genuine? Rather than being forced into giving a shameful performance before these women, Xie Qingcheng had turned the tables and caused He Yu to lose control of the situation. The leader, those hostesses. When they looked at Xie Qingcheng, their eyes were filled with admiration and pity. He Yu rose to his feet and slowly walked over to Xie Qingcheng. After a few beats of silence, he said mildly, "Forget it. This is just between him and me. You can all leave." Listen, if I worked there, I would have left a long time ago. Overwhelmed with relief, the girl's only thought was that if things continued like this, there was no imagining the kind of trouble these two nutcases would stir up tonight. With young Master He's permission, they streamed from the room and made a hasty escape. A couple of girls even looked at Xie Qingcheng rather woefully before they left, hoping that nothing bad was going to happen to him. Now it was only the two of them inside the private room. He Yu gazed down at Xie Qingcheng, who was struggling in pain on the floor. In the end, he was still the loser, wasn't he? He was still the fool, while Xie Qingcheng was still the immaculately dressed, righteous gentleman. Was there no way for him to force the ugly side of Xie Qingcheng out and make him plead for mercy? In the hazy lighting that brimmed with desire, He Yu swept his eyes over Xie Qingcheng's broad forehead, the stark line of his jaw, and further down, to the bob of his throat, the honest reactions of his body. He had been driven to this point, yet not a single button of his shirt had been undone. This person's masculine willpower and pride were just that strong. Though he trembled as he burned in the flames of desire, Xie Qingcheng was still aware of what had happened. He slowly looked up and said to the young man before him, "Are you done messing around? If you're done, you should come back with me. He Yu, you've lost. You..." It seemed like Xie Qingcheng had more to say, but another wave of lust swept over him, and he snapped his eyes shut, bloodied fingers clenching tightly on the edge of the tea table. It was too unbearable. Every second of every minute was torture. He had to use all his self-control to prevent himself from doing something an elder shouldn't in front of He Yu. He had to keep himself under control. He couldn't. Swollen beads of sweat dripped down his flushed face, the jut of his throat bobbing continuously as he swallowed. He Yu's eyes followed the up-and-down movements of Xie Qingcheng's Adam's apple before lifting back up to meet his gaze. Beneath those long, trembling lashes, his peach blossom eyes brimmed with moisture. The plum liquor had melted them into twin pools of water. Yet, when he looked into He Yu's eyes, they were still so calm. He Yu felt that roiling flame in his chest bare its teeth and claw through his heart. Would he really would he really fail to penetrate deep beneath this man's armor, touch the softest parts of him, and find his true face? No, he had to make Xie Qingcheng pay the price, because Xie Qingcheng was a liar. A liar. A liar. His rage surged. Sneering, He Yu suddenly picked up a glass of wine. With a slight tilt of the cup, wine began to pour like a trail of blood, seeping into Xie Qingcheng's slightly gaped collar. Xie Qingcheng was trying to provoke him, to toy with him. Well then, wasn't Xie Qingcheng the one who kept refusing? Wasn't he the one who wanted to let those women go? In that case, Yu would like to see just how this man planned on enduring his desire. Could he really endure it to death? The trail of icy cold wine wound its way down Xie Qingchung's scalding skin like a snake. He trembled at its touch, unable to prevent a gasp from leaving his lips. But when he met He Yu's eyes, he cut that inhalation off halfway, biting it between his teeth. The red wine quickly soaked through the weave of Xie Qingchung's white shirt like a flower painted onto his chest, or perhaps it was a pool of blood. Drop by drop, the entire glass of wine was spilled until the whole thing had been poured onto Xie Qingchung's body, filling the air with the bitter and astringent scent of tannins. Incandescently furious, He Yu grabbed Xie Qingchung by the neck and stared down at him. Pretend. Keep pretending. How much longer are you planning to keep this up? Xie Qingchung's body temperature was soaring, and He Yu's palm tingled from the heat. Give it up, said Xie Qingchung. I'm a man, not a beast. Don't you know the biggest difference between humans and animals? His lips trembled as he spoke, and his eyes were filled with extreme disappointment as he looked at He Yu. Humans can control themselves. These words, along with Xie Qingchung's gaze, made He Yu feel as if he'd been ruthlessly scalded. Xie Qingchung was lying beneath him, looking up at him, but at this moment, He Yu knew. Xie Qingchung had reclaimed his former position. He was once again superior to He Yu. Provoked to absolute fury, the resentful anger that had just erupted within him revived itself in an instant, surging into his heart at full force in a raging torrent. He was driven to the verge of madness, to death, and only Xie Qingchung's misery and loss of control, only Xie Qingchung's fresh blood and utter breakdown could save him. But how could he force Xie Qingchung into such a miserable state? How could he make Xie Qingchung lose control? Even after pouring all that liquor down his throat, those women couldn't entice him. The thought of those women still pissed He Yu off. Other than serving wine, they couldn't do anything that crossed the line. So how could their indirect seduction possibly be enough? Moreover, they lost their courage the moment Xie Qingchung yelled at them. They were all trash, useless. If He Yu wanted to achieve his goal, he could only rely on himself. Rely on himself. Rely on himself. We also have some very handsome male hosts here. Xie Qingchung is a total manly man, an ideal top. Young Master He is an ideal bottom. I totally want to fuck him. The messages from the guest book twisted together with the hostess's words in He Yu's mind. He Yu raged to himself. Why did everyone always think that Xie Qingchung was stronger than him? Even in this respect, they assumed that He Yu would be weaker. But now, Xie Qingchung was the one collapsed in front of him with no ability to fight back. He Yu could fuck him if he wanted. Total manly man, his ass. The ideal top? Wouldn't he be no different from a woman once he got fucked? Then those idiots would realize, just like he had, that everything about Xie Qingchung was an act. Xie Qingchung would be nothing more than a total manly man who'd been fucked by another man. The moment this thought popped into his head, He Yu was immediately and thoroughly disgusted by himself. Absurd. Far too absurd. How could that have crossed his mind? They were both men. Straight men. He couldn't do such a thing. Men were all disgusting. The bodies of his own sex. But was he supposed to just accept defeat and bow down to Xie Qingchung with a downcast look on his face? He had spent so much time and effort pouring a whole bottle of Plum Fragrance 59 down Xie Qingchung's throat. Yet he was still going to lose to Xie Qingchung? If he did, he would be nothing more than a dog to Xie Qingchung for the rest of his life, unable to raise his head ever again. He was in too deep now. He didn't expect that making Xie Qingchung drink would be so easy, but that making him lose his composure would be so hard. He Yu strode over to him and looked at this unsalvageable farce of a situation. Xie Qingchung was feeling extremely unwell. It was impossible for him not to give in to his desires tonight. But he was such a tough person that he'd rather be tortured to death himself than bully those pitiful women. Yu looked at his dazed face, his eyes clouded with lust, his parted, panting lips. Yu didn't like men's bodies, of course. Of course. Of course. But he was contemplating the only path left open to him, a path that might possibly end with Xie Qingcheng showing him weakness. Gazing at Xie Qingcheng's current appearance, he realized that through the sequence of coincidences, he had found the answer to a question that had long plagued him. What did Xie Qingcheng look like in bed? This question had popped into his head in the past when he saw Li Ruoqiu and Xie Qingcheng's marriage bed. Yu had never realized this himself, but no man who was genuinely as straight as an arrow would have wondered what another man would look like lost in the throes of passion. But he had wondered many, many times. He thought that Xie Qingcheng was too cold, too stiff, too abstinent, so he couldn't even imagine what he would look like intertwined with a woman. It was only now that he finally got his answer. Now he could see Xie Qingcheng's face up close and personal, as he was tormented by a desire, as his body was burned by aphrodisiac liquor. That was when he realized that, even though he found other men's bodies repulsive, Xie Qingcheng was different, somehow, from what he assumed married men would be like. He was just too abstinent and restrained, sinful, yet alluring, like a deity ensnared by a snake. Yu looked at this familiar yet unfamiliar body, at this man who had once been so imposing to him, and mulled numbly over his complicated emotions. He found that, more than anything else, he was filled to the brim with excitement at the novelty, and a sort of wild, vengeful exhilaration. He had truly gone insane tonight. He had lost all reason. Everything in his past had been destroyed. Xie Xue was fake. The contract period was fake. Xie Qingcheng's words were fake. Everything he thought he knew had been turned completely upside down. In the past, Yu might have held firm that, no matter what, men were not to be touched, not for any reason. But tonight, Xie Qingcheng had destroyed 11 fucking years of his faith. His whole world had been overturned. What was the big deal? What did sex matter? He'd come here to cut loose. He was planning to do something that he never would have done before, something scandalous and shocking, to destroy the foolish Yu that he had been before. So, what would be more perverse than sleeping with women in a nightclub? The answer was already on the tip of his tongue. The more Yu thought about it, the stronger the thrill running through him became. This was the thrill of rejecting his past self, the thrill of destroying who he used to be. He wanted to destroy himself. And at the same time, he wanted to destroy the Xie Qingcheng who had deceived him and left him in such a terrible state. As his eyes sought out Xie Qingcheng's face, lust-filled yet restrained, the nature of his gaze began to shift, ever so slowly. Yu knew that it was disgusting for a man to fuck another man, but if he was the aggressor, that would make it different from the way he had been harassed by those men in the past. He would still be the one abiding by male instinct. Sure. Tell yourself that. But Xie Qingcheng, as a straight man, even if Xie Qingcheng had been unable to hold back and slept with a woman, he would have only been a little bothered and embarrassed by it. But if Xie Qingcheng really did get fucked by Yu, then putting himself in the other shoes, to a manly man like Xie Qingcheng, wasn't that a much greater blow? Having come to this decision, Yu felt enlightened. He had been foolish before. He was a freak. So moving forward, he would become a freak, through and through. It made perfect sense for him to resort to the most excessive, cruel means to destroy both himself and the target of his hatred. Why in the world should he settle for the well-traveled path of female temptation? Xie Qingcheng was already engulfed by lust anyway. If, during the process, he could arouse Xie Qingcheng, that would be even more hilarious. The mere idea of Xie Qingcheng wanting him. Xie Qingcheng wanting him with no regard for his own dignity. If word got out, it might even kill him. He Yu had truly gone insane. So insane he trembled with it. So insane he would stop at nothing. So insane he disregarded the very idea of consequences. With a slap of skin against skin, He Yu grabbed the wrist of the still-dazed Xie Qingcheng. In the dimly lit private room, Xie Qingcheng heard He Yu's low voice as the young man faced him with his back to the light, his figure tall and straight, his aura unspeakably, terrifyingly domineering. It's too early for you to say whether I've lost right now. He Yu leaned in, his breath gently brushing across Xie Qingcheng's carotid artery as he murmured like a snake, dangerous yet enticing. As for you and me, Xie, let's see where we stand after tonight. Okay. Let me make sure, but I think we do have one more chapter. Yes. We have one more chapter. Don't worry, I'm not leaving yet. I feel like we're gonna possibly end today in the middle of things. Also, I feel like we should make there should be a new rule that I also drink to every time carotid artery is mentioned, because I swear that has come up so many times. He Yu is constantly looking at that carotid artery. Meat Bun is so good at matching her prose to the cringe of her characters. You are so right. Okay, we're on page 307 for chapter 52. To plunge into the abyss with him. Xie Qingcheng had no way of knowing that, due to the destruction of He Yu's perceived reality and the obliteration of his articles of faith, he had been seized by the urge to overturn his former principles entirely from the inside out. But even so, the moment He Yu pinned him down without even blinking, Xie Qingcheng still reached out with his unrestrained hand to grab a nearby wine bottle and smash it against the nearest surface. He Yu's eyes darkened. What are you doing? Xie Qingcheng was already on fire with scalding lust from the plum fragrance 59. He felt like the uncontrollable physiological reactions were breaking him down, but he was hardly the type to submit so easily. He didn't say anything, only continued to pant for breath as he stared up at He Yu with panther-like eyes. Then, he picked up that broken wine bottle and stabbed it into his own forearm without flinching. Blood gushed from the wound. Xie Qingcheng squeezed his eyes shut and bit down hard on his pale lower lip. The agonizing pain just barely shocked him out of the quicksand of desire. Chest heaving, Xie Qingcheng slowly set down the bloody weapon and leaned back against the tea table. He Yu stared at him with an ugly look on his face. He watched as Xie Qingcheng gasped for breath, taking in the taut stretch of his dress shirt, his wine-stained collar, his bleeding arm. As He Yu stared, he tightened his grip on Xie Qingcheng's arm. Warm droplets of blood slowly seeped through his fingers. Silence fell over them both. In this moment of lucidity, Xie Qingcheng strove to control his breathing as he looked at the youth in front of him through teary eyes. After a moment's pause, he rasped, He Yu, let me ask you. You actually are bothered by the things that I said in those old videos, aren't you? Yes. I think we've established that. He Yu didn't say a word. He let Xie Qingcheng's blood drip like tears from his fingers, each drop splashing onto the cold, tiled floor. It wasn't just the old videos, he thought. He'd seen nearly all the messages Xie Qingcheng had sent during those few years. In the end, He Yu just sneered. You've already asked me this question, and I've already told you the answer. I don't care. Who still cares about all that? Right, I forgot that he asked him that before, and Hoyu was like, "No, I don't care," but he obviously does. That's the whole thing. That is the whole thing. Of course he cares, but you're not very good at lying. If you really didn't care, you wouldn't be acting like this today. Xie Jingcheng was still panting, sweat beading on his face. He knew that his composure wouldn't last. He had to use the brief time he'd bought himself to persuade Hoyu to act more rationally, or at least with a little more lucidity. Hoyu was silent. Little devil. To be honest, back then, it took a lot out of Xie Jingcheng to talk about such things. The drug was too strong. It quickly relaunched its conquest over his blood, flowing to the very tips of his fingers. Xie Jingcheng squeezed his eyes closed, and when he opened them again, they were misted over with pain. But still, he suppressed the agony, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed thickly. Back then, the reason I didn't want to stay on as your personal physician wasn't because I found you appalling or frightening. It wasn't because I was worried that you would become the next Yi Beihai to my Qin Xian. It wasn't any of those things. You were already 14 when I left you, He. I could accompany you for 7 years, or even another 7. But could I accompany you for a lifetime? Staying by your side after you graduate and start work? After you get married and have children? That's not realistic. I'm only a doctor. Sooner or later, you'll have to depend on yourself to walk out of the shadows in your heart. That's what I believe, and it's why I left. Xie Jingcheng paused, holding He silhouette in his eyes. He, I think you probably understand this. How many people have it easy in this world? You don't need to look any further than the foyer of a hospital, the doorway of an ICU, or the entrance of a trauma center. I know that you're in pain, but at least you're alive. You shouldn't. But right now, He didn't fully understand what Xie Jingcheng meant to say. He was burning up so fiercely that his ice-cold heart was scalding with it. He'd never experienced a rage so fiery before. He viciously grabbed a fistful of Xie Jingcheng's short hair and sharply yanked him up from the floor. You're saying that I shouldn't what? What shouldn't I do? Xie Jingcheng, do you really have any idea how much pain I'm in? Numb and closed off, with no control over my emotions. During a flare-up, I don't even know who I am. I'm completely hollow. It's like my insides have rusted away or been gnawed empty. Not a moment goes by where I don't think about just ending it all. I've told you this before. Over the course of those 7 years, I described it to you countless times, but you still have no idea what it's like. Why did you agree to treat me, huh? Since you think that I should go look at a hospital, that my suffering is nothing compared to those patients. Why did you agree? Did you think it was interesting? The rarest disorder on Earth, psychological Ebola, without a single identical case in even the records of Yanzhou's oldest hospitals. How fascinating, Professor Xie. You found this clinical specimen novel enough to add a splash of color to your research portfolio, didn't you? Yu kept his voice low, but the light in his eyes trembled with fury. The patients you talk about, whether they're cancer patients or people with ALS, at least everyone understands the kinds of illness they have and how severe the symptoms are. They can find people who share the same suffering, huddle together for warmth, and encourage each other. But what about me? I'm just a research specimen to you people. An interesting lunatic, a beast in a cage. Is it refreshing, Xie Qingcheng? Leaving once you're done gawking and having fun? You even tried to deceive me with some ridiculous lies as a parting gift. And now you're still trying to tell me what I shouldn't do or what I'm allowed to do. Don't you find it cruel, Xie Qingcheng? A nearly imperceptible flicker of light seemed to flash through Xie Qingcheng's eyes at this cutting interrogation. But as he lowered his lashes, the faint glimmer quickly disappeared without a trace. I still feel that way, He, he said. As long as you're alive and still want to save yourself, no matter how lonely or painful it is, you'll always manage to make it through. That is, unless you choose to give up on yourself even before you die. A human heart can be very strong, He. You shouldn't believe in me. You should always believe in your own heart. Easy for you to say. He Yu stared into Xie Qingcheng's eyes. Every word was accompanied by the metallic scent of blood, as though it had been flayed from his hatred. Easy for you to say. Xie Qingcheng, you're neither sick nor in pain. You don't know that. You're just wagging your tongue and criticizing me for giving up. What do you know? If you were the one suffering the torment of this disease, how much better would you do? Xie Qingcheng, you're the one who loves washing your hands of matters and disappearing without a trace. You're the one who left the He family because you couldn't cure me. You're the one who resigned and switched professions at the first sign of trouble. Every word was sharpened to pierce through Xie Qingcheng's harsh dignity. Your hypocrisy disgusts me. You've been pretending for so many years. Even now, you're still pretending. One could have said that He Yu had still possessed a shred of rationality before, but at this moment, he was fully consumed by fury. He grabbed Xie Qingcheng's messy hair with no care for his grimace of pain, then dragged him up and tossed him onto the more spacious of the long sofas beside the marble table. Then, he silently turned and drew out the other yet unopened bottle of Plum Fragrance 59 and uncorked it, without the slightest expression on his face. Xie Qingcheng's head nearly blew up from rage at the sight of that strong liquor. The heat of desire was already making him fall apart after chugging one bottle of the stuff, but here He Yu was, opening another fucking bottle. What the hell do you want? At this point, even Xie Qingcheng had a note of fear in his voice. He summoned all the strength in his limp, helpless body to try to pull himself into an upright position. But before he managed to sit up, He Yu brought over the bottle of liquor. He didn't even bother with wine glasses. He just grabbed Xie Qingcheng by the jaw. Xie Qingcheng, who was nearing his breaking point, went pale as a sheet at the sight of that Western-style bottle, bigger than his face. Finally giving up on having a proper conversation, he started furiously cursing. You little bastard, you fucking lunatic. If you don't want this to end up being a murder scene, you better get the fuck out of here. That's right. I am a lunatic, said He Yu emotionlessly. Did you only just find out? Well, it's too late. With that, He Yu tipped his head back to take a large gulp from the bottle himself. Then he... No, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. Okay. He Yu tipped his head back to take a large gulp from the bottle himself. Then he pried Xie Qingcheng's teeth apart and force-fed the chokingly pungent Plum Fragrance 59 to Xie Qingcheng from his own mouth. Xie Qingcheng struggled so hard that half the liquor ended up on the floor, and most of the rest ended up on his clothes. Even though he didn't drink much of it, it was still strong enough to make him choke. Once He Yu let go of him, Xie Qingcheng slumped across the sofa and started coughing violently, as if trying to force all the oxygen from his lungs. Liquor mixed with blood, and blood mingled with sweat. Xie Qingcheng was trembling all over, in part due to rage, but also because of the lust that had begun its frantic, gnawing onslaught on his body again. He felt as if countless insects were biting into his bones, his body tingling and limp as he burned up all over. The sensations were terrifyingly unfamiliar. His face began to flush again, but what shone clearer than the lust was his fury. He was completely livid now. After his coughing fit, he turned and glared viciously at He Yu before he'd even steadied his breathing. He didn't bother to curb the sharpness of his tongue. What kind of beastly behavior is this? Not even animals could manage what you're doing. He Yu, you've really gone crazy. This is beastly already? Professor Xie, you're inexperienced indeed. There are far beastlier things. Why don't I give you a demonstration right now? He Yu tossed the glass bottle, swirling with the final dregs of liquor onto the floor. then stood up and stepped forward. Xie Ching-chung was just about to sit up, but He Yu pinned him back against the sofa's soft cushions and clamped his wrists together. He Yu's bangs hung down as he stared at Xie Ching-chung, who'd been completely soaked through by the alcohol. There was a hint of hair-raising viciousness in his gaze. Xie Ching-chung gasped for breath. He Yu. Hearing Xie Ching-chung call his name like that, with a hint of fear seeping into his voice, He Yu felt a surge of pleasure in the pit of his belly. Scarlet light gleamed in the dark, terrifying pits of his eyes. He kept Xie Ching-chung pinned with his own body as he cooed at him softly, sounding gentle yet deranged. Don't be afraid, There was still a trace of Plum Fragrance 59 between his lips. He licked them and smiled, as if savoring the taste. Do you know why I had to drink some of this too? Because I despise you, and I despise men. If it weren't for this liquor, I'm afraid I wouldn't be of much help in certain matters, nor would I be able to provide satisfactory service. He Yu patted Xie Ching-chung on the cheek. Xie, I've always been filial and respectful to you. You came here just for me, but I didn't treat you with enough hospitality. If that gets out, what would happen to my reputation? So, if you don't like those people, then I won't force you. But aren't you uncomfortable because you got yourself too drunk? After a few seconds of dumbfounded shock, Xie Ching-chung's gaze finally began to show some terror as he watched He Yu yank open his collar. Henry, not the hospitality. The tightly fastened buttons came undone, exposing the flushed skin underneath. In that case, I'll give you a hand. By now, He Yu had been provoked so far that he'd lost any interest in slowly enticing Xie Ching-chung. Xie Ching-chung would not hesitate to mutilate himself to maintain lucidity. So He Yu realized that relying on drugs alone would be useless. He had fully taken leave of his senses now. All he wanted was to savagely tear apart all the disguises covering Xie Ching-chung, and the more he thought about it, the more of his reservations he lost. Grabbing Xie Ching-chung by the neck, he said deliberately, word by word, Today, I can personally give you relief. I'll bring you to the peak of pleasure myself. Xie Ching-chung lost it. He Yu, what are you trying to do? What am I trying to do? As a formerly married man, do you have to ask? He Yu pinned down the madly struggling man underneath him. After a cup of Plum Fragrance 59, He Yu's own senses had become significantly more sensitive. Tearing Xie Ching-chung's facade apart was thrilling enough, but now that this man was twisting and turning beneath him, burning hot all over, with his clothes in disarray and stained with blood, his struggling movements actually stoked He Yu's flames even higher. He Yu stared at him with the eyes of a predator, as if he planned to gouge holes into his flesh. Guh. His breath was searing as it puffed gently over Xie Ching-chung's face and intermingled with his. What do you think I want to do? Xie Ching-chung was straight from head to toe and apathetic to sex to begin with. And he knew that He Yu was a straight man too, and homophobic to boot. How could he have possibly let his thoughts roam in such an outrageous, insane direction? It was only when He Yu wrenched Xie Ching-chung's wrists up over his head with one hand and began undoing the buttons of his dress shirt that realization crashed down on him like lightning. Excuse me for one sec while I drink some more tea. I don't know, I got a little bit of a sore throat. It was like out of nowhere. Listen, just fate needs to just let me finish the chapter. We are so close. It was only when He Yu wrenched Xie Ching-chung's... Oh wait, I read that already. His peach blossom eyes flew wide open, and his face blanched as he stared at Yu in utter disbelief. For a moment, he couldn't even be sure that this was reality. You're right, Henry. Meat Bun is draining my life force. But he could see Yu's youthful face, fearless, bloodthirsty, sickly, perverse, and crazed. The face that held a single-minded desire to devour all of Xie Qingcheng's dignity. Xie Qingcheng knew that Yu had really lost it. He began to struggle beneath Yu's hands, even though struggling had long since become futile. He shouted hoarsely, You fucking... I'm fine. I don't need your help. Get lost. You'd better get fucking lost. What the hell do you want? On Xie Qingcheng's habitually composed face, Yu saw terror, pallor, and ruination. These emotions burst like delicacies across Yu's tongue, causing his desire to swell even more greedily. He restrained Xie Qingcheng, who'd slumped down onto the sofa, with fingertips that were like blades, moving to slice Xie Qingcheng open bit by bit as he lay beneath him. Yu's handsome face twisted into a smile. Professor Xie, Dr. Xie, Xiege, you must understand everything by now. His low voice blazed, scalding Xie Qingcheng's rapidly heaving chest. I'm going to fuck you all night. You'd better remember to moan loud enough for me. His hand slipped leisurely down, and his fingertips caressed Xie Qingcheng's trembling lips. Xie Qingcheng squeezed his eyes shut, looking on the verge of being driven insane. However, he didn't have an ounce of strength remaining in his body. The longer this went on, the quicker his energy left him. If you fucking dare, you psycho. Heedless of his words, Yu began to pull at Xie Qingcheng's clothes, with a determined look on his face. No matter how much he shoved at him, Xie Qingcheng failed to fend him off, and in the end, he could only tighten his grip around his belt buckle. But Yu pounced and began to kiss Xie Qingcheng across his newly bared shoulder, the nape of his neck, his collarbones, all the way down, burying his head of black hair in Xie Qingcheng's chest as he licked the man's pale nipple with his rough tongue, then sucked it viciously. Xie Qingcheng's eyes widened, and he flailed like a fish out of water, but Yu only pinned him down with a fresh burst of force. Under the influence of the excessive dosage of aphrodisiac liquor he'd imbibed, lust gnawed at every bit of him, and he truly did feel an instinctive yearning to entangle passionately with another body. When someone was fully engulfed in lust, it didn't even matter all that much if their partner was of the same sex. This was bestial instinct. But Xie Qingcheng remembered that he was a human, and that he was Yu's senior, and an old friend of Yu's father. He absolutely couldn't, act like this. A tormented look crossed his face, intense lust clashing with extreme hatred. Unable to bear it, he turned his head to the side. We're holding hands. We're holding hands. I want y'all to know the chapter is almost over, so we're leaving in the middle of this. Yu was kissing his chest, feeling the tremors running through Xie Qingcheng's body. He looked up at him and saw the loathing on his handsome face, covered by a red flush. Yu felt a powerful thrill, unlike any he'd ever experienced before, powerful enough to override the distaste he felt for men's bodies, urging him to toy with Xie Qingcheng no matter the method. This was a Xie Qingcheng that Yu had never seen before. Xie Qingcheng who was paying the price for his lies and deception. Savage desire flamed in Yu's eyes. The pleasure of revenge could utterly subsume his disgust, just as the thrill of domination could override his instinctive rejection. Yu started to regret that he'd come to this realization too late, that he hadn't found this method of shattering Xie Qingcheng earlier. Henry, doesn't matter. We'll keep holding hands until next Monday. As they were tussling, Yu had already completely undone Xie Qingcheng's shirt buttons, exposing the wine-stained skin beneath. Xie Qingcheng's chest was very broad, his muscles firm and powerful, without being exaggerated, and the lines of his torso were sharp and clean. It was every bit the body of an adult man. Yu was a bit put off, but he felt his blood heat up once again at the sight of Xie Qingcheng's current appearance. Didn't Xie Qingcheng say he couldn't give him anything? Didn't he believe that Yu was undeserving of love? Xie Qingcheng, the one who stood at his lofty height, and never took anyone seriously. The one who'd restrained him and disciplined him. The one who had scolded, threatened, and lied to him since he was young. The one who even told Yu that he couldn't afford to employ him when he left. Xie Qingcheng, that stern, composed man who stood at the lectern and received the admiration of countless students, that man who seemed omniscient and omnipotent. A full-grown adult man, purely masculine, mature, formidable, and coolly detached, his aura so stalwart, it was more than enough to attract any number of girls, someone who'd once been married to a woman. No one would imagine that he'd submit to anyone. No one could imagine that he, too, could get fucked. Not an overwhelmingly manly man like him. But now, he had thrown himself into this trap of his own volition. He was being restrained by Yu, lying under him, and trying to refrain from trembling. The things Yu wanted, and the warmth that he craved, Xie Qingcheng could give it all to him. Xie Qingcheng could give it to him, himself. The young man swallowed thickly, burning with an unbearable heat as his blood came to a boil. Dr. Xie, you'd better keep this in mind. What happened tonight was because you drank too much and couldn't take it. You were so pathetic you needed my help. As for me, I'm not weak and cowardly like you. I'm willing to sacrifice myself in order to take good care of you. I don't need your thanks. I'm happy to help. Yu pulled Xie Qingcheng's shirt off, then took some black restraints out of the drawer beside him. This place had no shortage of implements like these, and tied Xie Qingcheng's hands tightly together. I still remember how you escaped from Jiang Lanpei's knots that day on the roof. Don't worry, this is a robber's knot. You won't be able to undo it. Well, that's the end of the chapter. That's where we're leaving off on this one. You were correct, Henry. A meat bun was just draining my life force as I slowly felt myself having more and more trouble speaking. Oh. So. Well, when we come back on Monday, we'll be on chapter 53, which is called To Have Him in My Grasp. Flashback of Stitch trying to explain her research and inability to find what exactly a robber's knot is. That's funny. That's interesting. I wonder if it's like you call the knot a robber's knot in Chinese, but it has a different name in other languages or something, and when they translated it, they didn't know that. That's just a random bit of information that I don't know. Or maybe Meat Bun just like made it up. She just like pulled it out of thin air. Who knows? Well, yeah, that was very eventful. So I will see y'all. Maybe Yu was just bullshitting, right? He's like, oh, I don't even know what this knot is called. I don't even know if it's that good. Just trying to intimidate him. So yeah, thank you for coming to this indeed very eventful stream. I will see y'all on Monday. Bye.